Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange. Today I'm going to do a really exciting video, and that is a horror book haul. I have nothing but horror to show you today. I've got 10 books that are either by indie authors or small press, and some of these I've read already, some of these I have not, but either way, you know me, I love to talk horror and I think this will be a lot of fun. Let's get started. First, let's talk about some of the books I have read, starting with The Hungry Ones by Chris Sorensen. This is a book so kindly sent by the author. Of course, he wrote The Nightmare Room, which is one of my favorite horror books from last year. And this is the sequel. It's the second book in the Messy Man series and follows a woman who decides to buy an old, broken down motel and fix it up. And the story goes from there. It's very much a classic haunted motel story, but at the same time, he brings something different to the genre because, you know, I don't normally like haunted building stories, aren't usually my thing, but in this case, I loved it. I did a separate review, highly recommend go watching that. It is spoiler free, so even if you haven't read the first book, you can still check it out. But let's talk about this cover. It's absolutely gorgeous. It matches the Nightmare Room perfectly, and I was so excited to get a physical copy. Not only is it gorgeous, but I was thrilled that it was sent directly by the author, which means it is actually signed. I never get signed copies. I love that he drew a little ghost there. And to make it even cooler, he actually blurbed me at the beginning of the book. The very first page, it says, "Praise for the Nightmare Room." And if you look right down at the bottom, that's me. I wish I said something a little more, I don't know, epic or something, but he quoted me as saying, "I think it's one of the strongest horror novels I've read in quite a while." So that was just really cool. I was definitely fangirling when this showed up in the mail and I saw that, and I'm just so excited to have this on my shelves. It's definitely one I'm going to reread, and I just cannot gush enough about the series. If you haven't checked it out, go do it. If you haven't, watched my review, all of that. But I just love this book and I'm so excited to have a physical copy. Now, speaking of gorgeous covers, I also received a copy of Golf Curse by Roubique, and this is another book that I have read and reviewed on my channel, but this follows a young man who gets a job at a golf course, and of course that land happens to be haunted, and the book turns into a really fun slasher. And this is so gorgeous to have a physical copy because of this cover. Roubique paints all of his covers himself, and it's just fun. You got this gorgeous skeleton on it, and I really like the artwork he does, so that was a real treat to read, and also to actually have a copy of is just an added bonus for sure. Along with that one, he also sent me a copy of Kill River 2, which I have not yet read. This, of course, is the sequel to Kill River 1, which I read last year and very much enjoyed. I have not read this one yet. I'm purposely holding off until August because it is one of our picks for the Bloody Beach read-along. I hope you're joining in. I'm very excited to get to this one. It is a fun slasher story that is all centered around a water park again, and it just sounds like the perfect horror book to read in the summer months. And again, Cameron does fantastic artwork, and I really enjoy this cover as well. So that was really cool when that showed up in the mail. Now, I also received a copy of The Thumming Stone by Brhel and Joseph Sullivan. This is a horror novella that is about a young boy who, along with his sister, comes across these mysterious stones that are monoliths or look like the stones from Stonehenge, and they end up possibly awakening some kind of ancient evil. They start to get premonitions that something terrible is going to happen, and the story goes from there. I don't want to say more than that because it is so short, but I was very much excited to get this in the mail. They do some really cool things with their artwork. One of my favorite things about Cemetery Gates, their small press, is that they tend to incorporate in a lot of illustrations, even though this isn't meant for kids by any means. There's definitely a lot of swearing in this one. All of their books, for the most part, do tend to have illustrations in them like this, and you just get these cool black and white that is done by an illustrator. So they've worked with a couple different illustrators, and I've always been super impressed. So I love the fact that the illustrations are in there. Definitely something that you enjoy more when you get a physical copy of it, so this is cool to check out. I have read this one. I don't believe you have seen my review yet because I'm just a little bit backlogged when it comes to editing, so let me know if this is one that you want to prioritize me getting it edited and up on my channel sooner than later. But I will be sharing my longer thoughts with you soon enough. And I also have a copy of Stirring the Sheets by Chad Lutzke, and this is another book that I have already read, and I'm just currently working on editing my my review video for it, so that will be coming. But this is a horror novella, the first book I read by Chad Lutzke, and it certainly won't be the last because I was so impressed by it. This is a very tiny book. When I say novella, I really mean novella. It's just over 100 pages. It's quite tiny. And this was a really cool, emotional story. It's not horror in the traditional sense. There's no jump scares, things like that. Instead, it's very quiet, very emotional, and I loved it. I will make you wait for my longer review for all of my thoughts, but I'll say that it was a 5-star read for me. I have done a written review on Goodreads, so if it's one you're thinking about checking out, I personally recommend it a lot. Again, don't expect to be scared when reading it, but it's this creepy little emotional story that left a big impact on me, so definitely recommend it. And this was sent via the author through their publisher, Bloodshot Books. And the really cool thing is that when they sent this book, they also decided to put in a few books by other horror authors. So I received 2 horror books unsolicited, which never happens to me. So let me show you those next. So along with Stirring the Sheets, Bloodshot Books also sent me a copy of Dust to Dust by MC Norris. Honestly, I hadn't heard of this book before I received it, but I'm very excited to check it out. It's quite short in terms of page length. It's almost a novella length where it's like 150 pages. But this is set in the Great Depression era, set in Kansas during that drought season. And so it's a time where farmers were just losing their crops because there was no water. And in this eerie setting, there is some kind of ancient evil that is going around and basically scooping people up. And so the story centers around a young boy who is potentially wrapped into this blood harvest when these ancient creatures or whatever this ancient entity is starts to come for him. I realize it's hard to give a synopsis without reading the book, but that's kind of what I gather from the back. And it just sounds really good. I'm personally a huge fan of Great Depression books, which might surprise people, but it's kind of my setting of the part of Canada that I live in. The idea of the Great Depression and the prairies and all of that is so up my alley, and I'm very much excited to get to this one. So I will try to read it soon. Even though it was unsolicited, it's very much a book that is up my alley, so I have high hopes that this will be a new favorite of mine. And the other book that Bloodshot Books sent along was What Sleeps Beneath by John Quick. And this is a book I haven't read yet. I hadn't heard of before they sent it. It's about a young teenager who decides to break into an asylum to steal a trophy in order to impress a girl. But when he's there, he ends up knocking over a corpse and essentially waking up a vampire. It sounds like a pretty crazy premise, and I'm very much interested to see where the story goes. I'm not always a huge fan of vampire stories, but this definitely doesn't sound like the traditional vampire narrative, so this one might work really well for me. Let me know if this is one that you'd like me to prioritize, in which case I'll try to get it read and reviewed sooner than later. Now, I also requested one book from Flame Tree Press, which is another small press out of the States, and that is Chop Shop by Andrew Post. This book is coming out at the end of June and is a really crazy story from the synopsis. I understand that it is about 2 women that work in a funeral home, and they're really getting a bad rap for doing terrible makeup jobs on their corpses. So in order to keep their business afloat, they decide to start selling body parts on the black market, and somehow they get involved with the mafia, and the story just goes from there. It sounds bananas. I'll be honest that the cover definitely caught my attention first, and the fact that the story really sounds like it has a lot of body horror in it is the biggest reason I did request it, because I thought this one could be right up my alley. Again, the synopsis sounds insane, so it's either going to be amazing or ridiculous, but I can let you know again if this is one that I get to sooner than later. I will try to prioritize a review if you're interested, and I'll just let you know what comes of this book because it sounds insane, which again could be a good thing or a bad thing, but I will let you know. Okay, we're moving through the stack, and I also received a copy of Wintertide Omega by Paul Roberts. This is one that was sent by the author, and he is actually a Canadian author, which really excited me because I love supporting homegrown talent. This is his newest novel that just came out this year and is about 2 brothers that go into the wilderness when their grandfather disappears. It sounds like it is a Canadian winter survival story, which is basically a Rachel book. I am so excited for this. So there are going to be elements of surviving in the cold, but also it sounds like some supernatural elements come in. They have wolves that are chasing them, and it just sounds like all the kind of things that I love to read in a book. Because it is set in the winter, I don't know if I should wait a little bit to read it, but honestly, even though it's really hot outside, I'm very excited for this one, so I'll probably read it sooner so that I can get a review out to you as soon as possible and let you know if you should check it out yourself. But from that synopsis, it sounds like a winner to me. It definitely sounds like the kind of horror book that I would pick up. And again, the fact that it's by a Canadian, it's set in Canada, sounds like so much fun, and I will definitely let you know what I think of it. And last but not least, I also received a copy of 12 Nights at Rotterhouse by J.W. Ocker. This I received from Turner Publishing out of the States, and this follows a man who works as a travel journalist. He basically goes to haunted places and does paranormal journalism on there. He agrees to spend 13 nights in the Rotterhouse, which is supposedly incredibly haunted, and he brings along his buddy and things get crazy. It very much sounds like a classic haunted house story, which isn't always my thing, but the reason I am so excited about this one is the fact that the author himself, which I did not know beforehand until I was contacted about this book, but he himself is a journalist who also goes around investigating and reporting on potentially haunted places. So the fact that the author is bringing so much of his own story into this one makes me so excited. It sounds right up my alley, and I'm very much looking forward to this one. It doesn't actually come out until the end of October. I'm going to be doing a review a few weeks early just so that you can know ahead of time what I think about it before the release date. But I'm very much interested to see how this one goes, and I'm hoping it's going to be a new favorite haunted house story for me, and I think it might be perfect to read in around Halloween. So I will let you know a little bit closer to the fall my thoughts on this one, just because we're so far away from the release date at this point. But just to put this one on your radar, this is one that I'm very much looking forward to. So that is it for this book haul. I'd like to know a few things. Of the books I haven't yet reviewed, which ones would you like me to prioritize? Again, some of the videos are already filmed, but it helps me to know which editing jobs to finish first. So let me know which books you want to see reviews for. Also, let me know which is your favorite cover of the books I showed, because there's some really nice ones in this haul. And I really enjoy a lot of the small press and indie book covers that they put together. I think they're really creative, especially when it comes to horror. And finally, let me know if you've read any of the books I mentioned, your thoughts on them. Did you like them? Did you not? I want to know either way. As always, thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.